Welcome back to another episode of Liddat Law. I'm your host Benjamin Ho, and we are at a very special episode today. We are outside and graced by a very, very special guest. First time in Sarawak, Mr. Edward Kaur.
Yes, I'm very, very happy to be here today. Thank you very much for Benjamin Ho for allowing me to be on the podcast today and also inviting me to his humble homestay in Sarawak. This is my first time in Kuching.
Just to clarify, this is not my humble homestead. We are at the old courthouse today.
Very magical place, by the way. I love the place. Yeah. What's this place called again?
The old courthouse Kuching, Commons.
The Commons Cafe.
Yeah, Commons Cafe, yeah.
For anybody who visiting Kuching anytime soon, this is the place to come. We're not paid by sponsor. We're not sponsored anything.
Yeah, no, they actually... Yeah, if we brought in large enough equipment, they actually wanted to charge us. So, so those who wanted to record, I don't think this is the place unless you're willing to pay. I think let's dive into today's topic. I think we will talk about practically like the life of a law student, but also generally, I think, in terms of your experience of just surviving CLP. But before that, I think we can talk about our life before CLP, which is our uni days.
Yeah, I think the uni days is definitely a lot more fun to talk about than the CLP days. I think that's for sure. Just maybe a quick intro for the audience of Liddat Law, right?
Yes.
That me and Benjamin, actually, we both attended the University of Reading Malaysian campus in Iskandar Puteri, EduCity. So I was 1 year Benjamin's senior. So obviously I've been through the hellholes earlier than Benjamin. Benjamin is essentially following my footstep right now. But okay, coming back to law student. Actually, I don't know about Benjamin. For me, law school came so quickly. Like maybe because it was due to the fact that my time was sort of hampered by COVID.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was hampered by COVID. So my foundation year was fully online. I did the full year online. I did attend 1 day of physical class. And I remember vividly that I think at the time, Johor reported like 5 or 6 COVID cases across the country, and not just in Johor. And then basically the provost decided to close, or provost or the university management decided to close the campus after one session. So yeah, I had 1 physical class for foundation. Then after that, following foundation, then went on to study law, the read law. Year 1, I don't know about you, Benjamin, but because the system of University Reading Law School is as such, right? Year 1, they don't count into
your very surprising to us.
Grading into your year 3 graduating grade. So from my circle of friends, none of us actually studied much for year 1. We just played around. Basically, year 1 is like that. So half of it, myself, I attended online. The second half, I think I spent 1 term at campus for 3 months. Then I went back for the exam season. At the time, it was online exams. Yeah, that sounds like a lifetime ago. Then year 2 came about. That was fun. I don't know about
actually,
you.
I want to comment before you move on to year 2. But when I was in my year 1, actually I was scared the hell out of like law school, because I not only had grades by the school, but also I had a scholarship, which meant I had to keep track of my grades throughout my entire university life. So my year 1, I was really scared because every law lecturers kept on telling us, oh, we grade quite harshly. Like we are very strict with our marking. We will not give out first class very easily. And at the time, they were very unclear about their CGPAs. And my scholarship was very adamant. We would grade you based on your CGPA. So I had no idea what grades I needed to get. So I basically had to get the highest grade possible to test out whether I am able to survive. So year 1 is very stressful for me. Yeah. But to be frank, I was also kind of comforted by the fact that it didn't count towards our final year. It was a magical year, definitely for us. For me, definitely, because I started discovering that law school was a bit different from my foundation in law. Because foundation in law, you're taught like half a picture, and you're like, what is going on?
I don't know about you, Benjamin, but then my take on the foundation program from Reading, of course they will ask you like, what's your sort of preferred pathway to degree?
Yeah.
But then more or less, I think it was sort of letting you find out what you're interested in more, because that's why they let you almost like A levels to choose your own subjects.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but for me, I'm different. I got locked in because I didn't want to take mathematics, and all the other courses that were offered at Reading, the requirement was that you need to have mathematics. So I very early on I told them I'm not taking mathematics. So yeah.
So my scholarship actually asked me to pick a subject matter to begin with before I entered foundation. So I also locked in with law, and also I didn't take maths. So I was really locked in with law too. Like even at Reading, I did not take maths. Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Maybe we should ask the audience of Liddat Law. Actually, how many so-called of our audience or followers of the who did law actually hate mathematics? I think we should ask.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very common phenomenon.
Yeah.
I'm one of those rare people who don't hate maths. I just thought it wasn't something I'm willing to pursue at a higher level.
That's very different. No, I didn't like math to begin with. In fact, I think that when I was in because I took O levels at high school, so by year 11, I made up my mind I was not going to take math. Although I did take account, I was quite a good accounting student, but I was not good at modern math. Yeah.
That is a very common path for all law students. I actually wanted to be a doctor right up until I took up the scholarship and realized I could not be a doctor without, external help, and there just wasn't any.
Actually, since you brought up the issue, right, Benjamin, I'd like to ask you, right? Look, law grads are everywhere.
They are everywhere.
I'm not going to name any college, but then I think anybody who study laws will know that there is one or two particular college that mass manufacture law grads. The question
Please
that
don't sue us.
I didn't name I mean, to be fair, but if you know, you know, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things. But I guess the question was, why though is that such an attractive proposition for so many young people who sometimes felt that a bit directionless? They probably felt lost, and they end up doing a law degree.
I think it's very curious because you have people who come into the social sciences at a very young age, and with our syllabus, especially in the Malaysian context, it's a very cursory reading of what the social sciences or the liberal arts is about. And I think with that, people have a sometimes misformed idea that the social sciences, especially at a tertiary level, is just all about memorization, especially for law. So they think that they can brute force their way into law. But I think, especially at Reading, I wouldn't know what the context is at other law universities. But for Reading, I think a lot of people who came in with that mindset that, hey, I'm just gonna memorize the law and get a law degree and get out, found it extremely difficult. And I think that was one of the really delightful things that I found out, which is that, if you really do have a passion for law at Reading, you can really find out that it's probably the right thing for you to pursue. Because I think at some other institutions, you're not able to realize to the full potential what the academic venture of law is. The academic exercise of law is a very different one, actually, from the practical exercise. And I think Reading does help you explore both. It's probably weaker on the practical side because we are very new as an institution. But I think in terms of the academic side, it was really well done from my experience.
All I would say is this, though. I think that we are increasingly seeing, this is my take on it, I think that law degrees in general, especially English law degrees or Welsh law degrees or Northern Irish law degrees for that matter, Scottish I cannot comment because their legal system is a bit different. They do civil, right? Yeah. But I do think that our Bachelors of Law, LLB, are increasingly become more of a arts degree more than actually sort of proper legal training, right? Of course, yes, you do learn statutes, you learn the fundamentals of law, you learn the principles, you learn the jurisprudence, the history of it. But then I think, I don't know, maybe because I went through CLP, it does very, very little to really tell you, especially I think procedural law. I think substantive law, I think that from Reading's point of view, I think they did very well in terms of training us how to do in-depth research.
Oh, definitely.
I think that's for sure. That's why I think Reading is one of the most sort of research-intensive university,
Probably,
right?
Yeah, that's what they call them.
I think that is the good part. But I think that in terms of maybe if you aspire to be a barrister, advocate, or in the US, I think they call it an attorney at law or counsel. I think it doesn't really much train us. I mean, look, if you are the active kind that go and take on courses or go on mooting competitions or go take your own initiative to go engage senior practitioners, that's a whole different story. But I think that law degrees is increasingly becoming, like you said earlier, I think it's almost like half of an arts degree where it lets you explore to see if you really, really have interest in it, rather than it's like I'm the old mindset whereby I studied law, then 90% of the time you end up becoming a lawyer. I think that also maybe nowadays young people also are more fluid in terms of their career choices, I think.
Yeah, especially I think in terms of the law degree here in Malaysia, I think the pathway to become a lawyer has become a lot more competitive recently. You are facing an onslaught of first-class degree students. You're facing an onslaught of UK bar students.
Yeah.
And you're competing at a level I think we have never seen before. You have a lot of people who are willing to take up the challenge at a much lower pay or at a much more challenging rate than before. I think like in terms of what I've heard before, I think this is in the coaching context especially, being a lawyer nowadays feels like a much more daunting task. It feels like everyone has connections in somewhere in their backyard perhaps. And I think in terms of the quantity, like the sheer quantity of law students, it is really daunting. You might think to yourself, oh yeah, I mean, look at my campus, there's only like how many hundreds of students, but you have to think about how many students there are being produced here in Malaysia and across, entire Western Malaysia and also in the UK who are coming back, right? People who took up UK universities, went to the UK, did their bar and coming back. And that number is just, I think, a lot more than people realize. It is a competitive field now. And so I think a lot of people do transition away from their law degree, intending to be a lawyer, but not ending up a lawyer.
This is an interesting take though, Benjamin. Of course, I agree with the part that it is daunting in the sense that the volume of graduates that we are competing with. I think that, like we said earlier, every year, I think the number of law graduates that's produced by all institutions. I mean, recently we saw that LPQB has approved new universities that are eligible to take CLP exams. So definitely, I think we will be seeing a lot more law grads. I think that's the daunting part, but I think that what I also want to maybe point out and ask your opinion on is, do you think that the scholarship of law grads this generation is actually as good as the one before? Because you know why? Why I say this? My personal observation is that yes, the last generation probably they do have it. People, you can say, some say that they have it slightly easier because competition was lesser. But I also feel that the last generation, because it was also a lot tougher under those circumstances, less resources, less know-how, less support. They don't have people to guide them through So the ones that actually made it and became lawyer are actually those that deep down they really want to be one. And that sort of, that passion, drive, or whatever you want to call it, makes them a really, really sort of, their scholarship level, I think, is at a different level compared to this gen, whereby, yes, you might say that there's a lot more things to handle now, but then you talk about lawyers nowadays, we have a lot more, LexisNexis, for example, case laws. You do not need to sit in library for hours to look for particular points of law. Judgments are readily available at all times, whereby back then, they probably sometimes, if they do not have that judgment in this jurisdiction, they might have to get it from someone elsewhere. From the stories I've heard back then, lawyers, especially litigators, they had to get judgment sometimes from Hong Kong on commercial disputes, some constitutional point of law in Malaysia's context from Singapore, or sometimes criminal law from India.
India, definitely.
India. So that is my question. I really want to pose to you.
I think firstly we want to point out that definitely in terms of the accessibility of law, it's a good thing that we have these internet resources or these online resources available, because back in the days, if you really wanted to find out what was happening across jurisdiction, you had to subscribe to these law journals from beyond the South China Sea, beyond
across the world, really.
Across the world, really. I think like if you want to get UK law journals, imagine how expensive it is compared to now. Like in the past, you had to mail the actual law journals down to Malaysia. I think in terms of that aspect, it's definitely a good improvement. But in terms of the challenge and improvement towards the scholarship of law, I think much rather the drive is still there. But the problem is, yes, it is getting more accessible in terms of the fact that they can pass their law degree much more easily than before. And I think, when I talk to some of the older lawyers, like really old lawyers, they are complaining about the fact that they see a lot more first-class graduates that doesn't showcase the eye and talents that they have seen before back in their days. And I think being a first-class graduate in the 60s or 70s was a much harder task than it is today. But I also think that with that, it also produces a much more specialized, I would say, first-class students in terms of the fact that they can come up with actual out-of-the-box thinking. Because scholarship of law that's done in different aspects in terms of the hardest parts of jurisprudence, like positivism by Hart or other authors, for example, the advances and the improvements towards that scholarship is being made readily available year by year. That means that the quality of your scholarship needs to go up and compare to international scholarship. So I think in that aspect, definitely there's improvement. And I think if you have the drive, it will still shine through. But also there is an increase in the baseline. Definitely it is easier to become a good law student than in the past. But also I think becoming a really high quality in terms of, let's say, a first-class law student with a bell curve in the university. That would be a lot harder than before. Or not just with a bell curve. Maybe even in Reading, I think getting a first-class degree was very difficult for a lot of students. And I think in that aspect, I would say that today we are producing more law students that would have been excellent or good in the past, but now lawyers are finding it difficult to find actually good law students who are able to independently research, who are able to guide themselves through without much help. I think in terms of that, that's definitely dropping. But in terms of good law students, I think we're seeing the actual first class with bell curves or without bell curves, but with a stringent matrix to have that quality that you're looking for, or even higher back in the day than back in the day.
Summarily, we can maybe conclude this to say that the scholarship has actually not changed as much. It's still very based on individual, in their interest, their passion for the law, and how much they want it. But more so, I think the challenges that a law student and a lawyer face today is very much different. As such, the skill set that university are training the students these days are also very different. And as such, there are a bit of gap in expectation, maybe.
Definitely.
In terms of the practice and also what lawyers expect from fresh grads, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the key things I think most people misunderstand is what is a law degree. Because the LLB degree is not meant to train a lawyer. It isn't. Surprise to almost everyone, I think, who went in thinking this is gonna help me become a lawyer. It is not. It is a liberal arts degree. It is a degree that's trying to help train your critical thinking. It's trying to help you to train to see different perspectives. It's trying to help you to see that writing as an art form, writing as a form of persuasion can come in different formats, and you have to expect those different formats. The different kind of logical thinking that's out there, I think surprises many. And I think in terms of that, the law degree does its job. But in terms of the expectation people have of a law degree, and in terms of what the law degree actually sets out to achieve, there is definitely a gap, like a huge gap.
It's interesting you brought up another point which I think is very, very interesting to hear. Art of persuasion, writing. This is another challenge, I think that modern day, especially this is my personal experience, because during my time, even though we did our final exams, it was still online. Now, I know for a fact, certain students, their work that got first class was, and this is the challenge of our time really, in the academic world and even in real life world, is that the rise in adoption of AI, right? And
Definitely.
the adoption of AI means that, again, like I said, there's no right or wrong. I think everybody should learn and adopt AI to varying degrees to help. The world is changing, we have to change with it. You can't run away from it. But it does take away the sense whereby we always have this talk recently over the last 2 years, 18 months, AI in law. Is this going to fundamentally change how we train lawyers again? Whereby, if you're not, for our gen, I would still say, your ability to write creative writing, persuasion, art of persuasion in writing, still plays an important part for us.
Definitely.
That's very important. I think especially English degrees, language plays a very huge part.
Command of your language basically determines your outcome.
AI, does that take away that requirement
Okay.
of language proficiency, because this is a real challenge. If we look at, and this is one of the problems that senior practitioners and judges has been saying, the proficiency of English language and Malay language in Malaysia's context of this crop of law graduates. I mean, look, the sample size is a lot bigger. So let's be frank, the sample size is a lot bigger. So
Definitely.
but there is seems to be a decline generally of standards in English and Malay proficiency.
Yeah, I think in terms of Malay proficiency, the judges are definitely very concerned about that.
Yeah.
English, I think there's definitely a decline, but I think we're seeing a slower decline than Malay. But in terms of AI, I think there's two edges to this. I think, first of all, people who think that there are academicians out there that thinks that AI is not a real threat
Yeah.
because, well, they cannot do citations correctly. They cannot do certain parts correctly. Some of the prompts that they give, returns very, very hollow essays or bad essays in general. But I think people, or students especially, who are very keen in making sure that they gain ahead, who are on ChatGPT like 24 hours a day for 7 days a week, they have gotten really good. And I've seen, answers from ChatGPT that truly astounds the mind.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of the threat of AI, we cannot discount that. But in terms of the quality of writing of AI and that of a human, there is still definitely a difference.
Yeah.
Would I think that it presents a threat today? Yes, but I think it presents a threat in QA, especially in quality assurance, in making sure that the students that you're getting, the fresh grads that you're hiring, how are you going to make sure that they are good lawyers? I think that aspect, we're gonna see a lot more LSATs for entering law firms instead of entering law school.
Yeah.
I really do think that, because today's climate, especially in terms of AI, if you if you depend upon AI too much, you may end up like those cases that we've seen, where you get disbarred because you use AI and you got caught using AI. But I think most people are quite smart in terms of where they use AI and where they don't use AI. And I think that's where the challenges lie.
Yeah.
When you need an actually smart student, and AI, and the students can always deliver very much out of the box thinking, and you want fresh grads to be able to come up with legal arguments where there just seems to be no possible way out of it. I think those are the minds that they're really looking for, and sometimes AI deliver, but the thing is, within the academic context, it's much more easier. It's much easier to deliver that sort of sharp thinking in a well-defined philosophical context. But in terms of the skill that's produced throughout that training, when you are doing it manually instead of using AI, that skill, I think, would need to be honed. And I think for law students out there, you can get away with using AI in your uni. You absolutely can.
Yeah.
So many of our friends have done it. It's practically a joke. But you cannot do this in the real context.
I mean, think about litigation.
yeah.
How are you gonna run away when you are in front of the judge? Right?
Yeah, like-
your language skills, you can't run away. Yes, maybe your submissions, you can still do it very well. But when it comes to, let's say, cross-examination, opening statement.
And one of the things that you have to remember is that law school gives you very simple context.
Yeah.
The questions that you're asked compared to the complexity of real-life cases, you're not dealing with a very, simply laid out case facts. You're dealing with very complex case facts that are given here and there. You have to piece together a story. You have to piece together a legal argument. Judges may not necessarily know what you're talking about. You have to educate the judge. These are skills that you really pick up when you're in law school.
Yeah.
You can use AI. I don't think you shouldn't. I think you should explore what's out there, but also think for yourself. I think in terms of what the threat of AI represents is the lack of critical thinking, the lack of independent thought. I think it's not so much that we use AI to train or to make our answers a little prettier or to make it sound better, but I think it's in terms of where people use AI to create the arguments themselves.
Yeah.
That's where the threats lie, because there is going to be a point in time where you are going to face something that not a lot of people know about, and independent research is much more important than AI.
Yeah.
Because what you're dealing with in law school is very well documented areas of law.
Yeah.
What you're dealing with in real life may be something that only 5 people have thought about. And in that context, if you want AI to help you, you better pray to the gods.
You know, there's this thing I was thinking about just now when you were saying this, and I think that summarily, the point could be concluded basically from what Benjamin you have said earlier is that I think that you can use AI to its fullest to help you get first class in law school.
Oh, definitely.
But I think, to be fair, and just now we were talking about the two stages. One is law school. Post-law school for us aspiring legal practitioners. Malaysia, we call them advocates, solicitors. You either have to go through barrister training in the UK or you have to go through CLP in Malaysia. Now, I've got a lot of problems with the CLP. A lot of problems. And we can say, this can be an entire episode in its own when we talk about the CLP and LPQB and how it's manufactured. But I think that it also, now that we're on topic about AI, right? This is where I think that CLP becomes very important in filtering students.
Definitely.
Because you know why? CLP, in case the audiences of and listeners of Liddat Law does not know, CLP is a fully physical written examination paper.
And let's talk about what CLP is first. It's called the Certificate in Legal Practice. It qualifies you from law degree. When you come out with a law degree, you're not an advocate and solicitor. You cannot practice law here in Malaysia. What you need to do to practice law in Malaysia is either get the certificate, pass the certificate in legal practice, which is a notoriously hard exam, fully physical, intensive, 3 hours, 3 hours exam. You have like 5 papers.
Yeah, five papers you have to pass.
5 papers that you have to pass. And in order to, and the passing rate is atrocious here in Malaysia, or you have to go to the UK.
It is essentially the hardest law paper to pass in the world.
Yes, I think people often say, oh, the California bar exam is really hard. And I look at the passing rate, it's 50%. I'm like, that's a joke.
Look, I mean, I'm pretty sure. Let's cut to the chase. No law paper is supposed to be easy. Let's get it out there.
That's definitely
across
true.
the world.
Yes.
But I think that perhaps the audiences who are more curious to find out why everyone has a problem with CLP should go and ask some of your friends to wonder why everyone has a problem with the CLP. But again, coming back to the point is just that if there is one silver lining and one good thing about the way CLP is structured, there's no way to hide. Really, there is no way that AI cannot help you. Your whatever LexisNexis, yes, they might help you with prep work, but in terms of getting in there, the grind, that 3 hour whereby you have to, one of my bosses before I went to exam actually told this to me, he gave me one advice was that you just have to do until you feel like you want to vomit. You have to read until you want to vomit. That was what he said. And so I think that is where perhaps now more than ever, physical exams like the CLP, purely physical, 3 hours, all or nothing. They give you one statute book. Their question might come out that concerns 6 or 7 cross statutes matter. Fix the problem, right? Perhaps this is where now we're starting to understand why the CLP was formulated as such. Even, I mean, to be fair, I'm pretty sure that was not the primary objective when they framed it as such. But it has somehow now becomes, I think that people could see the value as to why people need this filter.
Now this is where I become a devil's advocate and say, because you have passed the CLP through great pains, by the way, he wanted to die so many times, and I fully understand. This is where I become the devil's advocate and say that the CLP does not represent a true picture of what civil litigation or the life of a lawyer looks like. It helps you to prepare for a life of hardship. Sure, it is a life of hardship when you're CLP. It really does feel like the world is crashing down on you every day. But in terms of the actual syllabus and what it does for you, no judge, I think, in the entire Malaysia expects you to really know everything there is to know that the CLP expects you to know. No judge would ever expect that of a lawyer. You have to be Mike Ross, and he is fictional. And he didn't pass the bar too, by the way, just so we're clear.
He got admitted but didn't pass the bar.
Yes, exactly.
I think just to, we're on CLP subjects, right? Just to give you, the audiences of Liddat Law, a glimpse into how crazy this exam is. There's one paper, just now we mentioned there was 5 papers. There's one paper called Professional Practice, I believe. Let's just think about this, yeah? In that one paper, you have to, if I'm not mistaken, you have to do 2 mandatory questions which are on the LPA and the Bar Council rules and rulings. Then you have to do another 3, I believe, whereby the areas of law that you need to study includes land law, which has multiple statutes such as the National Land Code, Housing Development Act, Housing Development Regulations, and recently we are seeing recent years there's also some on I think it's strata property. I think it's something like that is getting in. We also have the no probate. And the last one is insolvency. Yeah.
So for those who doesn't know what probate and insolvency is, probate deals with wills, and insolvency deals with bankruptcy.
Yeah. So you have to memorize, you have to know and answer questions of these 3 particular areas of law. God knows how many statutes there are. In one paper, in 3 hours. That's how crazy it is. So,
and that's just 1 out of 5 papers that you have to answer within like how many days? For your exam?
I recall it was 2 weeks, but then so you have your paper on Monday, then you have a break, and then you have your paper on Wednesday, a break, and then you have it on the Friday, and then the next Tuesday, and then Thursday, I think. Yeah. So basically, you have a day break in between. But trust me, prospective CLP students, if you think that 1 day break is time for you to burn the midnight oil, to do whatever shit to cram, that day is for you to sleep. Genuinely, that day is for you to sleep and to revise some of your own notes. That's all. There's nothing much you can do by that time. Yeah.
Yeah, this CLP is something that I think one of the good things is that I'm not yet ready to be a lawyer. Yeah, for the audiences who don't know what I'm doing right now, I'm actually a compliance executive here at our state utility company, Solar Energy. And so I'm currently bonded, so I have the leisure of time to prepare for CLP. And even then, it is insane, right? It looks daunting. Insane, yeah. And he completed it within like 9 months, right? 9 months?
Yeah, or something like that.
Something like 9 months. This is an insane once-in-a-lifetime experience because you would not want to do it twice.
Yeah, I think to be fair, yeah. I mean, look, all I would say is that it is a very difficult journey, but then people say that you need luck in life, right? This is when you
really need luck.
You really need luck in life, yeah. And but I do think that if there's one thing you learn out of CLP, not so much. I mean, look, the books will be books. The knowledge you can't take away. Right? People say, I guess it's also the mental strength and fortitude, resilience. I recall the time when I eventually went back home after my CLP exams. One of my aunts saw me and then she was like, "Wow, you got eaten by your bookworms, is it?" Because at the time I dropped 10 kilos, by the way, during that 3 months period prepping for the exam. To be fair, a lot of things happen. Like I said, when you are facing CLP, as it edges closer to the date, it feels like the
world is falling apart on you.
No, it feels like the whole world is out to get you, literally. The system is out to get you. Yeah, the tea lady that you're buying tea life from is out to get you also by getting you the wrong order. Yeah, you go into your classes and your lecture seems to not give you the exact point of law that you want. Your books it's not booking as well at the same time. Yeah. So yeah, everything goes up against you. But like I said, I think eventually when you do pass it, you take it retrospectively. I guess there are good things that you take away from it. But again, like I said,
not when you're in it.
Definitely not when you're in it. I think that when you're in it, and I guess that I don't know why there is. Look, employers out there, every lawyer has got its personal preference, right? And I think this is a thing that perhaps we should discuss a bit as well. Is the legal industry. There is a few schools of thought out there.
Okay.
Whereby some lawyers seems to think maybe a group of them thinks that foreign grads are better.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. One thinks that those trained barristers from UK are better. Some things that local graduates are better. Some things CLP graduates are better. Yeah. So, what's your take on this? I'm going to share mine as well. But then, what's your take on this?
I have heard a number of lawyers tell me what they prefer. A lot of them actually do prefer foreign grads. We're talking about how hard CLP is because in the context of both of us, we are taking a CLP. But truth be told, a lot of our friends are taking the UK bar because, firstly, it's not as insane as Malaysia's. There is no insanely low passing rate, even though it's still a low passing rate.
Yeah.
In terms of CLP, of course, the cost factor, for us is definitely there. But I think in terms of that discussion, are foreign grads better? Are local grads better? I think in terms of local grads, there's also a difference. You have those from national universities,
Yeah.
right? Nationally established, national syllabus. They learn Malaysian law from the
Yeah.
get-go. And there are foreign universities that are planted here in Malaysia, either via the external system.
Twinning program, external programs, or branch campus.
Branch campus for us is the University of Reading Malaysian branch campus. And I think in terms of that, you also have that difference. That difference is very stark. Because you have, I think in terms of the Malay, especially law grads, right? They are very famous for producing like, 8 of the 9 judges in the federal court. Practically almost everyone who is anyone comes from yes. So you have that conversation of course, aside, then what's the difference between the other ones? Because it's not just you have UKM, you have and you have,
UNIZA.
UNIZA and like University of Reading.
Private university,
Private
MMU.
University, MMU.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the differences that we see, it's really minor. It is like in terms of local grads. But in terms of foreign grads, firstly, of course, the language skills are bound to be better.
Yeah.
This is not just owing to the fact that British education would get you a more immersive environment in terms of English, but also in terms of the fact that people who are able to afford an UK education usually do come from a more English, much more English educated background.
Yeah, at least I think still the majority of them are.
A majority of them definitely come from private schools. So, in terms of the difference between foreign grads and local grads, I don't see a difference. I honestly think that there isn't a big difference. There is a difference in terms of the culture and attitude that they bring, but in terms of the actual knowledge and in terms of the actual skills, I would be hard pressed to be able to tell the difference between the two.
I think I agree with Benjamin in the sense that I think that it would be unfair to summarily categorize one as being better than the other. I think that's very important to put it out there. But I do also agree, I think one point that you actually raised just now, which I think was right on the money, is that whether we like it or not, the exposure is different, the environment is different, and as such, the culture is different. I think that when I look at it this way, do I feel that foreign grads have it tougher to get in to become advocate solicitor? I think they do. Barrister course and CLP either are not easy pathways to go through. Do I think getting public universities in the first place is easy? I think that is difficult. That is very, very difficult. Yeah, right?
I think in terms of people who get into the law program,
no, I think
it is very difficult.
Not just even I think if you look at nowadays the quality of graduates from UKM, for example,
even UUM, I think
it's because they're very competitive, and that's why only the best of the best manage to get in.
But this is discounting the presence of external pathways towards national universities. There are complaints I think I have heard from multiple students.
Especially UM recently.
Especially UM. A lot of people have been talking about external programs. And the quality you can definitely tell.
Yeah, I think that is completely different story altogether. I'm pretty sure if you want, we can have a whole video on
another video on
university funding and how university have to be financially viable without government's financial support nowadays. But getting back to my point is that I think I would break it down to this. Benjamin bringing up a very good point just now is that local grads have a slight advantage right at the get-go because they have been trained in local law throughout their 4 years. If you plus STPM, maybe 5 or 6 years, or matriculasi, there's 5 years. So you have been exclusively trained in Malaysian law. So when you go, I think there is a natural sort of familiarity with what you're doing once you get out there.
Because a lot of the common law principles that we learn are actually codified in statutes in Malaysia, and so that transition for someone like us coming from foreign universities,
that takes a bit of transition period. I think, and I think secondly, so this is the part where the local grads have the edge. But I think that when I have engagements with big firms that does with international clients or maybe big corporations, their viewpoint is that on certain particular areas of law, it would actually be more beneficial if they had lawyers who are foreign trained instead. The idea is also simple. We have to understand one thing: whether we like it or not, Malaysia, we are comparatively quite quick to pick up on adopting new laws, legislating. But more often than not, we are not the innovators of those legislations or those laws in that particular area. This is where more often than not, foreign grads have the advantage, especially if you go to a certain university, for example. Let's say you go to a university that is specialized in research in environmental law. For sure, I think in terms of environmental legislation and ESG, very big thing nowadays, I think that you will have a natural, understanding of it much better than local grads that probably have lesser electives that are more niche in this aspect. And I think secondly also, when it comes to, for instance, you talk about barristers trained from the UK, I think that they'll find it difficult, to be very honest. I had a few friends who finished barrister course, they come back and they tell me that that transition is a bit difficult. The law, because it's a bit different, although the principles are more or less the same, it's common law, right? But when it comes to other side, which is not so much Malaysian statute focus, you talk about client management, you talk about advocacy skills, you talk about understanding legal traditions. I think that's where I think the foreign grads will have the advantage in that essence, because I think that whether we like it or not, our legal system we adopt from the British. And as such, if you were trained in Britain, you have a greater understanding and appreciation for, I think, certain traditions. I mean, it's quite famous. I think some local lawyers, they actually still don't understand why we are wearing bibs and ropes to court sometimes. And I think that is the stark difference, I think, also between the culture and the environment in which they were trained, I think, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the kid. Yes. But yeah, I think in terms of the culture that a foreign trained lawyer brings, it is very different. I think in terms of what it means to legislate, in terms of what it means to reform the law, I think in terms of law reform, especially within the Malaysian context, because we're stuck in the codification process where we take certain well-established principles and then put them into codified law. But in fact, I think in terms of our legal tradition of how the law moves and evolves, it's much easier, I think, to appreciate that tradition in the English context, because it's much more organic. You can see that how law develops, and you can see how jurisprudence becomes the forefront at how law shapes society and how society shapes the law. I think in terms of it's not UM, sorry. In terms of a Malaysian law syllabus, not just UM, it is difficult to see why we do certain things. It is easy to find out, we do this law, this is how you read it, this is the context, this is how judges read the law. But in terms of why we adopt certain laws, that is a difficult transition sometimes I see in terms of understanding the organic. This brings into more on the policy making side. This brings into the wide area of what a law degree could do. It is not just for lawyers. I think in terms of a law degree, this is for people who are into politics. This is for people who are into think tanks. This is for people who are thinking about something else other than law. And the law affects not just lawyers. It affects everyone. It is the rule of law that guides a nation. So I think in terms of that impact, sometimes as lawyers we are really bound in that cage where we are thinking, this is something that we are an expert in, and forget about the external perspective that this really needs to have. And I think in terms of a foreign law degree, they really try to bring in that perspective of the lay person. What does the lay person think? What are the issues that face societies that we need to address with law? In terms of that, in Malaysia, I think that's a bit weaker because we don't have that tradition of the law being...
The culture is not that prevalent, I would think.
But I think in terms of that also, coming back to the CRP point, it is, to excuse my language, a brain-dead study. It is almost 100% procedural. Yes, they will argue that there are critical thinking, there are problem questions to be solved. But when you boil it all down, what it's trying to get at is to make you understand what are the procedures and substantive law apply, and that's it. When you're in, I think in terms of a UK bar context, you're not just trained in,
Procedural
law. They do, it is a big part.
Yeah.
But also they train your advocacy skills.
Yeah.
They train your cross-examination skills,
Client management.
client management skills. How do you manage the expectation of your client? I think in terms of that, Malaysian lawyers sometimes do have a hard time in terms of how they communicate
Yeah.
with their clients.
Yeah.
Because, if you go on the street and talk to people who have been in accident cases, I think there are a number of lawyers out there who are extremely poor in client communication, client management. They create this, they have a gap with the client, what the client understands and what they
Yeah.
understand. And in terms of that, that's a very important part of the legal industry. Because what we are trying to do, not insofar as the law is concerned, it is not just about defending your client and making sure that the process of auditorium partem, hearing both sides of the argument is being done, but also upholding the sanctity of the legal profession. How we are portrayed in society goes very far in terms of how much society can come to trust the legal profession, and in terms of how much we can help to shape society. If the public do not trust us, it is hard for the legal industry to really move the needle. We do not have that authority and that that trust from the public. It is really quite important, I think, in terms of that. So in terms of the holistic skills, it is unseen. It is less, it's harder to put your finger on. It's less obvious.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of what the UK bar really does for a lawyer, it is really helpful. You think about things that you have never thought before. And I think if you are from a CRP background, I think lawyers would be quite adamant or quite afraid that you go up and do cross-examination on the first try. Or they're quite adamant that you understand how court works first before you really go into it. Because I think there just isn't an appreciation of really how the thing actually works. And in fact, I think all of our CRP lecturers have advised us to actually go into,
Internships,
mini privileges to really find out what it is like in court. Because what you're learning is really by the book. You don't know why some of the procedures exist. You have no idea you have no idea of how the natural flow of things come to be and why you're learning of these procedures. I think it's a lot easier to appreciate that with a more holistic education rather than what we have now.
I think that yes, understanding law, substantive law is one thing. Understanding procedural law is one thing. Understanding which department to go to, at which state the wheels of justice is important. But I think more often than not, what has been sort of understated, underappreciated is also the skill of communication. I think the way the advocacy work that we do in court and the advice that we give to our clients, and also how we communicate our knowledge and our views to public in general about law are very different things, I think. Yeah, and I think that this is also forms kind of a perception as to lawyers are very good talkers, because we seem to be able to talk to different crowds in different ways, as number one. And also, I think people generally, I don't know about you, but then the people who come up to me say this about lawyers, that they find us very weird when we talk to each other. Because, and I realized this also because even if you are law grad, don't even need to be a CLP candidate or a lawyer, I think there is this thing about us whereby we are able to discuss certain issues which are controversial, and we can be very different in our views, but we can discuss it. But in other people's eyes, we actually, they might think this is weird because you guys don't agree on anything on the subject matter, but then we find it's normal. I think that's one thing that I think I get a lot from people from non-legal background. They're like, this is very weird dynamics that they're not used to. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think in terms of that, I think lawyers, I mean, I can only speak for the law graduates I interact with. There are other people that are, I've heard secondhand accounts of that, have really poor communication skills.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of when you meet a lawyer, you cannot assume that they have perfect communication skill or good communication skill. You cannot assume that they have strong critical thinking. It may not be their strong suit. I must preface that. But with that said, the law graduates that I've met, I think in terms of the appreciation of different viewpoints in law is very important. The merits that are in different arguments need to be weighed very carefully because that forms the entire foundation of our legal basis.
Yeah.
It is from the conversations we have with each other, with people we disagree with, that forms the best scholarship we have. The best scholarship we have are arguments between jurists with the best. Even our court system came out from a contradiction of the Code of Chancery and the Code of Equity. We need both sides. In today's world, yes, you have both Chancery and Equity. But back in the days, it was a contradiction. Yes, there was a lot of problems. And I think in terms of how society progressed forward, it is with the exchange of different opinions. It is with a very healthy, I think, engagement with the other side that helps to shape who we are. And I think in terms of law, we are very good at doing this because hearing the other side sharpens our argument. It helps us become better law students, better law graduates, better lawyers,
better advocates.
Advocates. And definitely in terms of how we think about stuff, I think we don't just disagree. We actually do take up the merits of different sides and try to think and weigh them carefully. I don't think we disagree in a conventional sense. We disagree in the sense that in our final conclusion, in our final standing, we may come to different ways of approaching things. But in terms of how we get there and the merits we consider, in terms of the factors we take into account, they're much rather the same.
Yeah, but Benjamin, but I have to say this though. I think, do you think that in the world that we live in, whereby, look, to begin with, I think societies and in general that are not lawyers, they see law as black and white. We understand our legal system, unlike the Sharia system, it's not the law of morality. We're not judging on the merits of morality.
Yep.
We're judging on the merits of argument of law.
Definitely.
Right? And I think this is something that perhaps a lot of people in general cannot understand or cannot contemplate.
And I want to preface this by saying, even on morality, there are strong arguments in the realm of ethics about what actually constitutes morality.
But you see, this is the issue, though. I think that in the world whereby, especially when social media, everyone is allowed to give, we talk about the high-profile cases and judgments, sometimes people don't actually understand the legal arguments put forward. All they come to is, that judgment is not favorable to what we think is morally right or wrong. So
I think in terms of that, one really strong thing that lawyers really understand and come to appreciate is the idea of due process.
Yeah.
Due process is the idea that everyone who stands accused of something is presumed innocent first and must go through a process by which we determine whether the guilt stands the challenge of the other side. The one who accuses, does it stand that challenge? I think in terms of that, people often fail to appreciate that justice is not something that we rush. It's not something that we see, it's blatantly obvious. Because nothing in this world is blatantly obvious. It may be blatantly obvious because of the narrative that have been shaped throughout the years. But in the eyes of law, nothing can be blatantly obvious because conspiracies exist. Right? I'm not talking about conspiracy theories, but I'm talking about actual conspiracies. There are different considerations given, not just in terms of the law, but how the law is intended to shape society, of how the law intends to reform society, of why the law actually exists in the first place. That question that's posed not only in parliament, but also in courts, because the law is a living thing that affects everyone. And I think in terms of that, when you come to appreciate the different cases that we have, when you come to understand the legal profession, especially in our many readings, why we do certain things that seem absurd at first, and we can disagree, sometimes it ends up being absurd, why there's an argument to be had. And these arguments are not for argument's sake. If there is a merit in the argument itself, one ought to really consider, and as lawyers we do consider, are we wrong? Are we actually correct about where we stand? Because I think in terms of society as it stands today, they're very firm in where they stand. They're very firm in their they are very firm in terms of what they think is right. But they have the understanding that their split-second judgment can inform what is right. And I think in terms of law, it's a bit different. We stand firm, but we want to understand where we stand. Are we standing correctly? And whether the facts even are true in the first place.
I totally get what you're coming from. I think that you were right to say that people need to understand lawyers' stance to protect the system. That's why you say the respect of due process, that you respect the verdict because you respect the system. And that our system is based on the Blackstone principle, which is we would rather let the guilty person go away than to convict an innocent person.
Mm-hmm.
But in an increasing, this is, I think, just to throw out a viewpoint there from the general public, who some might say is getting increasingly frustrated with the long due process of justice.
And there is a valid complaint in terms of how long due process actually take.
But I think also generally we are seeing, maybe in this era, because this generation coming up, they grew up with quick judgment. Everything is faster now. Obsession with short reels, with YouTube shorts. They jump to conclusions very quickly. So when you tell them about due process, you tell them about every argument needs to be let it run its course and we have to listen its argument at its full merits. It's difficult for them to comprehend because, and I think that whether we like it or not, this is a personal view, I think we're living in an increasingly polarized world and increasingly more judgmental world. Do you think this actually makes it harder or is there bigger social pressures than ever on the judiciary, lawyers, advocates, judges to get, to deliver
what they deem as justice?
Because I think that the interpretation from the public, and look, we can talk all about principles,
definitely,
jurisprudence, and at the end of the day, law, that you said about trust in law and in the system, it only works if people believe in the system. And in a world where people is increasingly getting frustrated by long processes, it maybe sometimes misunderstanding also of certain judgment, because as we know, a lot of news portals, sometimes people just look at the headline instead of reading the full judgment. I do think that it is increasingly difficult for judges and lawyers because we are humans after all. We do get affected sometimes by public opinions. And that's why I think in law we have this principle of what do you call it? Used to be prejudice. Prejudice, right? So, how do you see it? I think that is it more difficult nowadays for judges to satisfy or sort of strengthen public confidence?
I think in terms of where we stand today in the world, we are living in a world that is very, very literate, but not very knowledgeable. What I mean by this is, as we progress from the 19th, 20th, early 20th century, post-World War II to today, you're seeing an explosion in the rates of literacy. That means an insane amount of people today can read words, can understand basic sentences, can understand things more than any time in history. And before, literacy became such a widespread thing, you had to convince the public who can read. Today, you have to convince everyone because almost everyone can read. But in today's society, it's not just that everyone can read, but that we have a machinery that aims to satisfy this public's craving of understanding as fast as possible. That process of actually knowing something has been shortened. Everyone's an expert after watching one reel on climate change. Everyone's an expert after watching one reel on religion. Everyone's an expert after watching one short video on, I don't know, cooking, right? They assume they can do this and that after a very short presentation. And oftentimes, it is a caricature of the actual knowledge that's presented. And so in today's world, where we really want people to understand us, we have to adapt. There is no choice but to adapt. That's why we're seeing an explosion not only in short-form content for everything from dancing to donation drives, but also I think in terms of legal education, it is important, crucial, absolutely crucial for us to adapt. But I think it's also time for us to really reflect as a society on how we arrive at things. Because this is a problem that not only affects the legal realm, where people come to appreciate knowledge in a quick fashion, but also in every other realm. Everyone's an engineer, everyone's an interior designer, everyone's telling everyone that they're wrong, that, why don't you build it this way because I'm correct? Why is this built why is a policy made this way? I'm a policy expert too. I've read, one article on The Economist or something. I think in terms of that needs to be changed. But also in terms of the legal profession, we are famous for being slow to adopt social norms.
Yeah.
And I think that is our Achilles heel in today's society. If we really want society to understand us, we really need to produce content, we really need to produce things that are relevant and understandable to society. We still use Latin sometimes. Nobody uses Latin, not even lawyers.
Doctors.
Doctors, well, they have no choice. I think the vocabulary is a bit stuck there. But in terms of lawyers, we have the choice of moving forward. Yeah. You are seeing an increasing pattern where judges try to simplify their language. You're seeing a pattern in which lawyers do try to understand and to bridge the gap between what client knows and what they know. Of course, there is a dangerous aspect to this, which is that a lawyer's job is a lot more than what people think it entails. Yeah. It is a lot of work. It's not just that 15 minutes interview where they tell you the law and they come to the answer like that. It is very different.
Actually, I just want to say this. Yeah, people think this is the thing I always have. Maybe I might be naive. Okay, but this is the opinion, right? People have a problem. I'm pretty sure Chinese New Year, when you graduate with a law degree, your relative will start come up to you and ask you for advice.
Yes.
And when you say that you can't give proper advice unless you charge money, because they'll be like, why are you so stingy with your advice? But I don't see people bargaining on how much they pay when they go see the doctor for consultation. I don't see them bargaining for price when they go see an architect to design their dream home. And just to come back to the point with what Benjamin raised us now, for me to answer what seems like a very simple answer for you, that's probably 100 hours of work behind the scenes to come.
If you have one question of law,
yeah,
you have one very complicated set of facts, and you have one very complicated set of legislation, case laws, and potentially hundreds of years of jurisprudential thinking on this matter, right? You're not dealing with, yes, the law seems clear because you read one statute. Good for you. Great that you've actually read the statute, but sometimes the statute is not very straightforward. Sometimes there are ambiguities that are answered in a totally 180 way of how the statute is framed. The work of the law is a very nuanced one, and I think people really misunderstand how nuanced it gets. It really gets difficult sometimes. Even, I think, as some senior lawyers do, when they sit in a court, they sometimes get lost in the argument. Not just lawyers, but judges. Judges go for a recess sometimes, not because they want lunch, but they go back and read. Or they go back and get briefing from people who are subject matter experts. And things like this happen because we respect the law, not because they are not knowledgeable. The corpus of law today, the corpus meaning the body of law today, is so vast. It deals with everything from you hitting a car and how we're gonna pay for that, and protecting your personal data from multi-million-dollar corporations like Microsoft or Apple. It is a difficult subject matter. As a judge, as a lawyer, as a practitioner, even a paralegal, your job is not simple. Your job is adapting to the many facets of this world and adapting them and understanding them in the context of a body of law that may have been adapted or may not have been adapted to this problem that you have. Right? I think you work for a sports law lawyer very famously. And I think there are so many niche areas of law that people don't know about.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to my relatives, I really cannot answer that one simple question you have because sometimes it's not simple at all.
And I think that people generally think that because you finish a law degree, you are an expert in all laws.
Oh yeah.
I think that is a common misconception. Although I'm pretty sure if compared to a lay person, we definitely would have more knowledge on the matter than the general public. It doesn't mean that we're an expert in all fields, yeah. And
I think how much more we know than the general public is by a tiny amount if we don't do our research.
yeah. And I think because we know of the repercussions of an ill-advised legal opinion, sometimes I think lawyers, we are even more reluctant to say too much on things that we are not sure about. Yeah, I think this is the thing. A lot of people think that, if you're a lawyer, you can be a politician. That's not the same thing. Politicians, you can talk things without facts. Yeah? Especially in today's world. Lawyers, the repercussion of a lawyer spouting nonsense, you can get disbarred, by the way. You can get disbarred. So anyone out there who has been scammed once or get illegally formed legal opinion, you can report to the bar council. You can get disbarred.
They disbar people all the time. It is a very. I think in terms of the nobility of that profession, how we want to treat ourselves. We treat ourselves to the higher standards. Of course, we don't always achieve it. Of course, there are injustice happening everywhere.
Yeah, mistakes happen now and again. Yeah.
It is not a perfect system, and there are valid criticisms. We're not saying all criticisms formed against the legal profession is wrong. I think there are many that I fully support and agree with. But I think in terms of sensationalized cases, my goodness, it is sometimes really difficult to hear the opinions of people that come to quick judgments that says, how can this judge say this? Or just blindly praising a judge because, this judge delivered justice. But sometimes you have to understand that a case law doesn't only affect one case. It affects the corpus of law. It affects the entire legal system as a whole. Every single case out there is setting a precedent, and it can be a dangerous one, or it can be a really good one. Judges. When I first started out studying law in my first year, and I learned about all the famous cases, and I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, these are very simple principles. Why are they famous for such simple principle? I could think of this in my bedroom. I would think that, and you need to think of that in the context of the law.
Of that period in
time.
Of
that period in time, especially because there are so many weird conceptions of law, and you are not necessarily going to arrive at a good principle, because a good principle must be universally applicable. There are only so few of them. Principles of law are very hard to arrive at. Principles of law are painfully arrived at, with many injustices occurring, with many pseudo-technicalities that have been mulled through to arrive at a simple principle. And I think in terms of the general public's knowledge, what they really need to understand is this. Judging is very difficult. It is a very, very difficult thing, especially when it comes to criminal law and also in civil law. One case may be worth millions. One case may be worth someone's 20 years worth of liberty.
Could be death penalty.
Or could be the death penalty before
punishment,
Yeah. It could be someone's life. It is a very daunting task for a judge to arrive at the decision all the time. And so I think in terms of the profession in itself, how we consider things, how we deliver at things. If you have the time, go read a full judgment. I think it's really insightful for the members of the general public to really go and read full judgments.
You do know Malaysia is not a literary society, right?
Yeah,
Let alone asking them to read the thick judgments
yeah, exactly.
on technicalities of law.
It is difficult.
Yeah.
But I think it is important. I think in terms of one thing that's if you remember one thing, it's this. We have due process. Because if one day you are accused of something, you would want the benefit of the doubt. You will want the full benefit of the doubt that the law gives you. You will want to make sure that you can prove your innocence. And if someone out there is pressuring you, the judge or your lawyer, to deliver justice quickly, just because it seems like the right thing to do, remember that you might be on the other side
Of the fence,
of the punishment. You could be risking bankruptcy, you could be risking your life of 20 years or even your entire life. We do what we do because it is important, because it affects people's lives. It really does. I think in terms of sometimes like people don't realize how impactful one decision can be. And lawyers go through hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And you're affecting hundreds, if not thousands of lives. And so the decision that needs to be made needs to be careful, needs to be done very carefully. Yes, we don't always do it as carefully as we need to. We don't always do it as well as we should. But we try our best. I think in terms of the legal profession, they really do try their best. I've seen clients really sacrifice their time, their life, their family for their clients. And it is a noble profession, I think, in terms of especially criminal lawyers, but even civil lawyers.
Very noble indeed. You know what, Benjamin? We've gone on so much about I think it starts to get a bit overly technical for the general audience. Why don't we, before we end today's session, maybe on a lighter note, I'll ask you first, you can give a very quick short. Do you think that being a law graduate, how does it affect your, number one, social life? And also, how do you think certain, family members see you? And also maybe even your personal life, like your personal relationship, how has it affected you? Yeah.
In terms of my social life, it's definitely improved. I'm a nerd to begin with. I love the English language. I love arguments. So definitely I found my crowd in law school. If you are someone, who enjoys debate, who enjoys reading, law is definitely something you should consider. Not necessarily something you would need to take on, but definitely a worthy consideration. In terms of how my family sees me, not much. I think they've always seen me as argumentative.
How about your sister?
My sister sees me as a cash cow, apparently. The legal profession does not pay that well. I must tell the general public. I think people overestimate how much we get paid by a lot.
Yeah. Most definitely.
The legal profession is... I think when I first became a law student and I heard about the market rate, I was shocked. Oh my goodness, I might as well be a clerk, I said. But yeah.
Selling nuns earn more nowadays, I think.
Yeah, especially in Kuching. But in terms of my personal relationship, yeah, I think it helps. My girlfriend's a lawyer, so definitely that aspect helps because, we don't fight as much.
That's a new one I heard.
Yeah, I mean, when you fight so much in your daily life, when you fight on papers, over your arguments, when you fight with your lecturers about the opinions you hold, when you fight about everything other than everything about the law, you don't really, and I think the bond that I think in terms of finding your crowd, it really has helped me. I found my girlfriend in law school. I found my crowd in law school. I found all my really good friends in law school. If you're the kind of person who enjoys deep philosophical arguments, enjoy, persuasion, you enjoy reading, you enjoy talking about the merits of social issues, of political issues, of today's society, law school will not only help you, but also shape you. I think I will hold very different opinions now compared to before I came into law school. I think people move towards the middle all the time when they come into law school. If you're conservative, you become more liberal.
I think lawyers in general are. They cannot be far right or far left, right? It's very difficult to be far.
I think they can come in very far right or very far left, but they always move towards the middle.
Middle, the center.
Yeah, it becomes because you really you're forced with this onslaught of different merits of argument that you really come to consider. Hey, maybe I don't know everything. Of course, we do have our own preferences. We do arrive at a moral point where we agree with certain philosophical arguments, where we agree with certain views of morality. Yes, we do. We're not amoral creatures. Members of the general public, please. We have morals. Surprise. We don't do everything just for money.
If we were paid, sometimes.
Yeah.
I take look. I get everything you say, and I totally agree with that. But I think actually, come to think of it, I think it sort of starts to shrink the social connections that you can make. I don't know. One thing is, of course, like Benjamin said, you do find your crowd. Like you enjoy. Like I said, similarly, I think it helped because our law school is that small.
I must preface that. I knew everyone in our school. Yeah, literally everyone.
You will know everyone in your class.
Yeah, because basically. You have like 30 people in a class, so 90 people in law school. It's a small crowd.
Yeah, so you do, I think, yes, you get your crowd whereby people who, like you said, I think there's no... Anyone who comes in slightly of the more extreme left or right, they gradually become more moderate and more accepting or at least willing to agree to disagree. I think that is something that... But I think it's also because of that, I have this feeling that increasingly we find it more difficult to connect with people outside of this particular pool of circle or people who has this particular trait. And I don't know, I just feel like maybe it's a sort of a transient moment for me in life. I just think, I do hope that I'm able to have more friends that are outside this circumference of people, right? Because I think that in life we need to have different... Maybe this is again the lawyer thing. You do need to have different views, diverged views. But I think it's getting increasingly more difficult because I think that number one, I think like we said earlier, not everyone can accept this, can tolerate or accept this agree to disagree model. I think also secondly, people don't understand. I think the time are very limited for us. We work very long hours, very very long hours, and for any prospective law students out there, if you think that the life of a lawyer is like Harvey Specter, where you work 6 hours a day and you're always well-dressed, lived in $15 million apartments, driving supercars and dating supermodels every day after work, maybe reconsider. It's a whole different ball game. It's long hours. It's a hard grind. And like we said earlier, sometimes you do feel that you're not well remunerated.
Let's just put it out there. You are not well remunerated. It is a fact. Law is a way of life. Once you become a lawyer, I'm not talking about in-house counsel. I'm not talking about maybe you work at like for example, I'm a compliance executive. I think in terms of the work-life balance that I get, it's nothing. It's so much like better than a lawyer. And I've seen I've done internships where I realized this is a hard grind. If you're in law already and you're thinking about work-life balance, do consider corporate. A lot of lawyers actually give up this way of life. It is a difficult one. It is an insanely difficult one. If you don't have a good support model, if you don't have a healthy way of dealing with long hours, with actually realizing what you're doing with your life. And I think in terms of the passion you have to have for law, I really like the law, a more sustained, long-term understanding that this is an investment into something that you're truly passionate in, something that you really cannot see yourself without. It is hard to survive.
I think maybe right before we end this, I would just like to say this. I think that if you're a lawyer, you're not poor. Like, let's get it out there.
You're not poor.
You're not poor unless you're a terrible one.
Sorry.
You're not poor, but I think that expectation whereby you come in that you're going to be rich. I think that if that is your aim of getting into the profession, or that is your sole aim alone, it's going to be an uphill battle. I think it will be difficult for you. I think because I think, and this is a personal opinion, I think that government servants, doctors, lawyers, these are professions whereby it's more than yourself. I think it's almost a profession of, the people always say it's professions of nobility, because it's always about the greater good.
Yeah.
The individuality doesn't matter. The individuality matters. Maybe nowadays we're seeing lawyers, that's why we say that in terms of how they argue in court, the art of persuasion, right? That is where your creative mind works. Maybe it's the way you interact with people. That's how, and we also see increasingly a lot more lawyers are getting a lot more fashionable with their outfits, I think. Yeah, that is the individuality. But I think in terms of the profession and as a career, I think it's about public service. It's about the greater good. And I think that, I'm not saying that if you do not have this want of a greater world, or at least contributing to a greater world, you will not go far in law. I'm not saying that. I mean, this is up to the individual itself lah. But I'm pretty sure that you need to have something, a core, that sustain you through difficult challenges throughout your practice. I think that's very important. And I think if you do not have that, when the times get tough, which there will be tough times in practice and in life, you will find motivating yourself very difficult to hang on to the profession. And I think that maybe this is the lessons that I've learned. So if you think that you're going to go in after 3-5 years, you can become partner, and then you live happily after with 15, 20, 30K per one, I think that then that's not really the case lah. More often than not lah.
Consider a corporate job.
Yeah, then maybe do follow Benjamin and be a corporate job rather than a corporate slave like me. Yeah.
I think one thing to end. I couldn't have put it better myself. I think it is a transcendent profession, as you said. Lawyers do earn their wages. I've seen clients really come in and say, why is your services so expensive?
Yeah, so pricey.
Yeah, so pricey. Why is the legal profession out to like scam me or something? Why is the litigation gonna cost me this much money? It is not. It is not pricey when you compare to the expertise they bring to the table, in terms of the work they bring to the table, in terms of what they need to do. Yes, I don't deny the fact that some firms may have exploited their interns. Mine didn't. Thank goodness.
Pupils as well.
Yeah, exploit their pupils, which are paid a lot less than lawyers. Yes, okay, I don't deny that. Yeah. But I think in terms of the actual hours put in to win a case, to help you defend your case, it's a mighty difficult job. Sometimes you're just stuck there banging your head against the computer thinking, how am I going to win this for the client? And this is really larger than self. I've really seen lawyers struggle with themselves even when the client's perfectly comfortable with the outcome of losing a case. And that's where, like Edward said, this is a larger than life profession. It is something that, takes on, I think it's something that really consumes you sometimes.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful about how it acts and interacts with your life. For me, I'm not there yet, so I'm glad. But I do need to build up to that, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, but there's a long way to go yet. Anyways, this is us, me, Edward Kaur, and Benjamin Ho from Commons Restaurant and Cafe.
Cafe, I think.
Cafe and restaurant.
Yeah.
Kuching Sarawak.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys like this episode and that you'll tune in more often to Liddat Law.
Liddat Law. Thank you very much. I couldn't have ended it better myself.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Bye.